What the Tech is sponsored by Hover.com. Domain names made simple. Go to gfq.hover.com and get 10% off your entire purchase. And by Stitcher Radio. Listen on the go via the Stitcher mobile app. For more information, go to stitcher.com/GFQ. Welcome everybody to another thrilling episode of What the Tech. I am Andrew Zarian. I forgot who I was for a second. It's been one of those days, guys. One of those days. And I'm joined by Paul Thurrott. Paul Thurrott,
Hello.
right? Did I get that right?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
Really paying attention, but yeah,
Good.
it sounded good.
No, I've had a for people who were watching the pre-show, because we broadcast live at gfqlive.tv. By the way, new gfqlive.tv up and running on our website. I am having an awful day, to the point that I was hoping Paul would say this is definitely the drinking show this week. We've been teasing a drinking show.
Sorry about that.
And you had things like going to a Little League game.
Well, it's not the going to, actually, if I was just going to the game, drinking would not be an issue, but I'm planning on riding my bike there.
A bicycle or a motorcycle?
No, well, either one, I guess, but a bicycle in this case, and I think that would be disastrous.
I do not agree. I think that would be a lot of fun, actually. Do you have a motorcycle?
No, I used to, though. I've owned 2 motorcycles.
Really? What did you
in
have?
my life. Both of them were, one was a Suzuki GS450, and the other one was very similar, actually, also Suzuki and probably a 450. I think it was a 452. They were both,
Really?
kind of what real motorcycle riders would refer to as women's bikes, I think. But
No,
I
it's a
used them to
450.
get back and forth to work early on and into school in those days.
No, it's a great bike.
I dumped both of them, by the way.
I had a Ninja 500.
Yes, I didn't have any like pocket rockets.
Let me tell you, it was one of the worst experiences of my life. I rode it for 300 miles, and I fell just shy of my 300th mile, and I never rode the bike again. I just sold it. It was a 2003. It was in great shape. I just sold it for a lot of, considering it was a couple of years old, I got a pretty good value because it had no mileage. But it's the most uncomfortable thing to ride. I'm looking at the bike right now, the one that you had. They're very comfortable. I mean, you're sitting like this.
Well, you're sitting up, right?
Yeah.
The thing you're talking about, you're in a cocoon.
I'm literally crouched like this. You can't see left or right. It was the worst thing in the world.
I could never do that. And by the way, just to be clear, I owned both of these things out west. Once in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and then in Phoenix. I would never drive a motorcycle in this part of the country. People here are idiots and do not
on the
look out
East
for
Coast,
motorcycles. I would be dead within days on a motorcycle.
One of my buddies has a bike. He just got a Harley, beautiful Harley, and he says it's almost like an obstacle course. Obstacle course. I had to think about that
An
one.
optical course?
They check your
It's like
vision
when you go
and
to the eye
everything.
doctor and the stuff moves around.
Not only did I make you ride the chart, you got to run through a maze.
It looks like an A, but is it moving?
So, but it's almost like if you're riding a bike, people do not want to let you go through.
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
It's awful. It's an awful thing. I didn't know that. I didn't know you had a bike. Get to know Paul. Guarantee you, 90% of our audience did not know you rode a motorcycle.
I had a superhuman experience with the first one. It never rained. It never rained in Albuquerque really, and when it did, the streets would get oily because the lack of rain meant that the oil in the asphalt would never have a chance to drain or whatever. So I wasn't driving like an idiot, but I drove through an intersection. I slammed into the curb, crushed my foot between the bike and the curb, and fell off.
Wow.
So as people came, the ambulance came and everything, and my foot was like, I miraculously, they actually x-rayed me twice because the guy couldn't believe I didn't break a single bone in my foot. He could not believe it because it was so crushed. It looked like a mashed potato that had been opened up,
Wow.
But I had one of those moments where someone was helping me up, and the bike was laying in the street, and I picked it up from the back. There was like a kind of a little metal bar thing that you put like a backpack on or something. And I actually not only righted the bike, but I picked it up and put it up on the curb. And I remember this guy looked at me and he was like, well, I guess you're not that hurt. And it was one of those like crazy kind of adrenaline moments because
Yeah.
this thing must have weighed, whatever. There's no way you could have picked this thing up.
Oh, they're
by
heavy.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was nuts. It was, my Superman moment.
Well, that's actually a a scary story, Paul. When I fell from the bike, I don't remember much from it. Like it wasn't even that awful. Like I slid because I was riding like an ass. Because that's what you do when you have a bike like that.
I believe it's in the owner's manual.
Yeah,
I think you have to.
If you have one of those bikes, you just have to be
by definition. Yeah.
Yeah, an ass. So I stopped, and I stopped, I guess, too fast, and I just literally went sideways. Sure. And thank God it was a quiet street, but I mean, just the whole experience of it, I'm like, I'm never riding a motorcycle again. Probably won't ride a bicycle either.
You ever see it's like you take a pound of hamburger and you just roll it across the table? That's what it's like.
That's exactly what it's like, yeah. But you don't want to be the hamburger. This is What the Tech. Paul and I discuss technology, not necessarily tech news, but things that we like. If you're in our chat room, we have a great chat room at gfqlive.tv. If you're in the chat room, you could change your nickname. I should tell you guys. You could change your nickname by clicking on menu and change nickname, and you could be whatever you want, like Garby and Veer.
Or GS450.
Or GS4, or Paul's motorcycle, or a Ninja 500.
I believe the GS actually stood for Girls School, by the way.
Well, no, they're not. You know what? I started off with a 250. I had a Ninja 250, and then I got a Ninja 500.
I think my current lawnmower has a bigger engine.
Has a bigger engine than 250, yeah. A lot's going on this week. Paul and I, before the show, were discussing
our inability to edit Google Docs.
How it crashes. Paul has a great Audible pick of the week, which is Diffkavda.
Yep.
Great audiobook this week.
My version of Latin.
We're going to play the 10-year game at the end of the show. But I do want to go into something we were touching on before the show, and that's the new MacBook Pro refresh, which it's on its way. Probably sometime in June, where we get it every year. Mm-hmm. People are saying that it will be released with the latest version of OS X, which is due out over the summer. And it's a lot thinner. At least by half. I mean, from what I could see, right, Paul? I mean, did you see the image? I'm going to try to pull up the image.
Show me the image.
Let me try to find this image.
I've heard. So I've heard different things about it. I want to say, by the way, it's funny. Before I saw the show notes, the one thing that was going through my head was I wanted to talk about this notion of bigger Ultrabooks, right? So Ultrabooks today are typically 11, 13 inches. Sometimes you see a weird size in the middle somewhere, but we're starting to see 14-inch Ultrabooks. But given how light and wonderfully small these things are, it occurred to me recently that, a 15-inch Ultrabook with a high-res display would be an awesome thing to have because it would give you the big screen, but also the light weight and the portability and everything. And I think that if I understand what Apple's doing, it looks like they're shooting for something along those lines. The only other thing I've seen that's anything like this is the HP, I don't know if it's called the Envy or if it's the Sleekbook version or whatever, but they have what looks like a 15-inch Ultrabook, although I think they only put the screen up to 1366 by 768, which is a shame. I mean, arguably something like that, you would want a 1600 by 900.
Here it is. As my Mac freezes, I can't move my mouse. That's
so. By the way, that image that you're showing is a visual version of what I had heard, which was that it would actually retain the design of the current MacBook Pros, not have that wedge shape like the Airs. And maybe that's just, I mean, that could be faked because someone could have heard that rumor and said, okay, well, here's what that would look
listen,
like.
This could be easily faked. It looks nearly identical.
But thinner.
But thinner. I mean, all they did was just chop up the top a little bit.
Yeah, but here's why you might want to do that. And there's a link, you have a mention in your notes that suggests this. It says it will also include flash memory to cut startup times and extend battery life. This is something that PCs already have. So if you configure a PC laptop, like a Windows laptop, a lot of makers like HP does this and Lenovo does this. If you want like more of a hard drive than you can get with an SSD, like you can get a 128, 160, 256 gig SSD, but they're really expensive. An alternative to that is to include a small amount of flash memory, like 32 gigs, and then a regular hard drive, right? And the reason why that would be desirable, aside from the obvious stuff, right, the extra capacity and so on, is that it gives you that kind of halfway point between the awesome boot times and speeds of an SSD plus the voluminous storage. And I think with like the Pro type laptops that Apple sells, that actually makes some sense. I have no idea if this is true, but you could see where that would kind of fit within that kind of product line.
Now, do you
know? You want both.
One thing I'm noticing in this picture, I'm assuming these are 15-inch models that they're displaying because
exactly. Like in other words, it wouldn't surprise me if they dropped the 13 because they have a 13-inch Air now.
Yeah.
And that Pro is just 15. Well, 15, probably 17 still. I've heard rumors they might drop the 17. I actually hope that's not true, but I would imagine 15 and 17,
yeah, because here's one issue that I have with the 13-inch. If you could see it in this picture, which let me go to camera 2. There we go. It has an audio in and audio out.
Right.
The 13-inch does not have that.
Yep.
Do you know what a hassle it is for me?
You complain about it a lot, so I'm a little bit aware.
No, it's awful actually because unless I get a USB adapter, I can't do audio in and out at the same time. It's one or the other.
So in other words, for the stuff that you do, regardless of the specifics of it, and I think there are a lot of people like this, that there's a huge class of users that just needs an iPad, but let's say a MacBook Air type machine, which I think is why these Ultrabooks are going to be such a big deal. I put up with a lousy keyboard on the Ultrabook I use simply because it's so wonderful carrying this thing that weighs under 3 pounds. It's just, when you think about all the back-breaking laptops I've carried around, it's amazing. So, but that said, there are people that need certain things, and not just big screens, but more powerful processors that are going to throw off more heat and won't work in those really thin enclosures. More capacious hard drives and so forth. So, I think for people like you and for professionals, literally, MacBook Pro, I think it makes sense to continue that line as that type of product while continuing Apple's, desire to always make things thinner. So I think sticking to the basic form factor but making it a lot thinner is fine.
I think people are going to be happy with this. I saw the design and I'm not in the market right now for one because I just got it about 9 months ago. I got my MacBook Pro, but
where did you see this thing, by the way?
The image, it's on the feed. Do you see it? Hold on. There we go.
Yeah, but what's okay?
9 to 5 Mac. It's if you look at it, I mean, it's fairly identical. But now they're saying that it's also going to have USB 3.0 and two Thunderbolt slots. So because they're removing the optical, the other side is going to have USB ports and optical, whatever.
Which is fantastic, and then they can have more space for battery in there.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's going to be lighter.
I mean, I think on the PC side, there's no equivalent to this yet. We have the HP Envies, which go up to 15 inches. Lenovo just announced some stuff, but their Ultrabook stuff is still 13 inches.
I'm looking here. I mean, it's nice, but it is thin if you compare it to non-Ultrabook laptops, right? I mean, the non-Ultrabook, i7s are fairly thick.
I think you're always going to have both. I mean, well, maybe not. I think for the foreseeable future, you're going to have both, right? You need a certain amount of space just to fit these ports, When you don't taper the thing down to a very small tip, you can have a couple of USB ports, not just one at the back, right? You have more room for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think the expectation at first was, after we saw the recent MacBook Airs, was everything will look like this, But actually, it wouldn't surprise me if that design it was either based on what someone heard was accurate or it was in fact accurate. It seems like that makes sense for those bigger machines.
See, I need to I kind of have to install Windows on this machine because we're going to be using it for a lot of our remote stuff. Mm-hmm. And I've never installed Windows on a Mac. I don't know how difficult the experience is. People say it's not, but this is a great Windows machine.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on how you use it.
I mean, the hardware is it's great hardware. I don't think anybody, and I know there's this whole I don't use Apple product mentality, mm-hmm. but the hardware it's really solid.
No, but if you're looking to buy a Windows laptop, you can save a lot of money.
You could save a lot of money, yeah.
It has the same hardware.
But see, here's my theory. I don't think a lot of people buy the MacBook Pro because they're buying because they want to, have the Mac experience. I think a lot of people that go and buy this thing buy it because aesthetically it's nice. It's a nice looking laptop.
Yeah, but
I
it's
think that's
also
what
an
it comes down to.
added expense to get Windows and then install it on there. I mean, it's not necessarily for everyone. I would imagine that most people who run Windows on a Mac are in fact primarily Mac users. I mean, I tried it myself. It's not ideal.
I had a family friend come over yesterday, and we were talking about just Apple and Windows, and she was asking, oh, I heard Windows 8 is going to be different. So I explained it. I showed her Windows 8. She thought it was pretty cool. And then she turned around. She goes, I just bought a new phone. And I go, what did you get? The iPhone? She goes, oh no, I don't like Apple. But she's never owned an Apple product. I mean, never. So she goes,
some people are just opposed.
Some people are opposed. And she goes, and I go, what did you get? She goes, I got the Droid Razor. And I started playing around with the thing. It's a piece of junk.
Yeah,
it really is. And it's not that I'm knocking Android. It's not about that. I mean, if it was, I would just say I hate Android, but just it's not good. And she spent like $300 on the phone when it came out. And I said, why didn't you get the iPhone? She goes, I don't like Apple, and I don't want to buy an Apple product. But she has no reason not to like Apple. I mean, some people have a reason. Like right now, I could tell you, I do not like Mountain Lion. Or Lion, not Mountain Lion. I don't like Lion.
Why?
It doesn't, a lot of issues with applications. I have almost every application on this thing crash on me on a regular basis.
I can't say that I dislike Lion. I mean, as is always the case, I prefer Windows to Mac OS 10. Period. Lion's okay. I mean, I think it's as much of a big departure, from the UI perspective with all the swiping and stuff.
Well, I think Leopard was a better operating system. And now I'm going to sound like those crazy people that say XP all the way. 14 years, 20 years ago by, they'll still swear by XP. Yeah. I still think that Leopard was a better operating system. I did not have these issues that I do with Lion. And I don't know if it's the way I'm using it.
I don't use it enough to say anything.
Yeah. But, I find the fanboy mentality fascinating. I mean, I'm sure you deal with it a lot too. Everybody makes great pieces of hardware and everybody makes bad pieces of hardware. I mean, it's just how it works.
I haven't thought about that in a while. There was a time there where Apple goons and Linux guys would be kind of neck and neck for the prize. Obviously the real Apple goons are kind of hard to take, but honestly, I think I haven't thought about this in a while. I mean, Apple has obviously become a very, one of the most successful companies on earth. So I think a lot of their little guy at the beach getting sand kicked in their face attitude has kind of gone away. I mean, it's not, what are you going to berate the Windows guy for? He's not dominant anymore. I mean, it's not the same climate,
Well, when you talk about market share, it's a very small percentage of people that actually own a MacBook Pro. In the grand scheme of personal computers and laptops, it's a tiny chunk, but I don't know what
machines.
it is.
I mean, I look at something like that. Apple people always love the BMW comparison. I would say in that case it's pretty accurate. I mean, as a percentage, there aren't too many BMWs on the street, but they're always really nice. And when I look at a MacBook Pro, I think I see the same sort of thing. I mean, it's a nice machine. It's more expensive, but they're nice. I'm sure the new ones are going to be fantastic. I'm also sure they're not going to be ideal as Windows machines compared to whatever Windows Ultrabooks we get this year. So,
well, you touched on something interesting. Now, and this is the problem that will plague Windows Ultrabooks. Mm-hmm. Every time someone releases one, they are always going to be compared to the Mac Air.
Well,
they're always going to be compared to it.
The thing is, by the end of this year, there'll be 5 times as many Ultrabooks as MacBook Airs, and by the end of next year, there'll be 10 times as many. And this is still the PC market. That's not changing. I'm sorry.
But do you think the perception's going to change where people don't look at this thing and say it's a MacBook Air?
In the beginning, these Ultrabooks were MacBook Air ripoffs. That's just the one I have is a horrific MacBook Air ripoff. That is increasingly not the case. If you haven't done it, go look at those new HP Envy machines they just announced. Those are amazing. They're beautiful. They don't look like MacBook Airs. I'm sorry, they just don't. I mean, in fact, they've taken on a kind of a new design paradigm of their own. They're just nice looking. And that's going to change. The sheer variety of PC makers and the sheer variety of types of PCs that these guys sell, well, the same thing will happen as always happens in the PC market. Apple sells 2 or 3 different things, and they're going to sell 1,100 different things. Some of them are going to be really unique and innovative and nice, and we're finally starting to see that. I think the problem I had with the first generation of Ultrabooks is that they were very clearly reactions to the
MacBook Air, and they weren't done that well. I mean, battery life wise, and
they're okay. The one I have, you would sort of assume maybe that this thing must get like 8 or 9 hours of battery life. It does not. It gets like 4 or 5 hours of battery life. It's fine. It's not bad, but it's not like the awesome thing you would hope for.
Yeah.
And there are some bad aspects to these designs. Obviously, the batteries are sealed in now. That thing we used to complain about that Apple did is very common on the PC side now. I don't like that necessarily, because it doesn't give you a great, unless the PC maker, which by the way is another great differentiator, gives you the chance to extend the battery with a slice in the bottom, which some of them do. You don't have the opportunity to easily bolster the battery life.
I'm still hoping. There was a story out early last week about this discovering battery technology, where the silicones don't corrode.
Was it Mayan technology?
I don't remember. It could have been Mayan technology, and I think it's debuting on December 21st, 2012.
Did you hear that they found a new Mayan calendar that goes thousands of years beyond that?
Oh, yeah, they've been talking about that for years. They've been talking. It's fascinating. I have a friend that really believes in that stuff.
I do. I have kids who believe in that stuff, but of course they're like 10 years old.
Yeah, he's a 40-year-old. My father-in-law is really into that stuff. Like, he thinks that the planet Nibiru is going to crash into us.
He must have loved that show, like In Search of,
Yeah.
Those like
ancient
Peruvian
aliens.
mountains that have like the airline, the
Nazca lines.
the aliens used.
Yeah. It's always, it goes, ancient astronaut theorists believe that the lines of Nazca were a landing path. Nothing with irrigation. I mean, let's just throw irrigation out of the window.
Man-made irrigation.
That show has jumped the shark to the point that they're talking about Sasquatch. Mm-hmm. And, let's say there are stories about, Bigfoot. Like, there are like people.
I desperately want
documentaries.
Bigfoot to be real. I think we all have to understand it.
Well, now they're saying that Bigfoot is actually an alien put on this planet just to mess with us. I love that show. That is the great thing about the Discovery Channel.
We might be talking about the same show. There was a promo for a show where it said, like, tonight, new information about Bigfoot revealed. And
that could have been it.
I paused the TV and I said to my wife, you know what? If there was new information about Bigfoot that was revealed, this would have been in the news.
Well, do you remember when Geraldo broke, what's his name, the vault, and there was nothing in it? For whose vault was it? God.
Well, it wasn't King Tut's, though, but it was some kind of...
No, the mobster.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
God. Come on, chat room. You guys know. Capone's. Yeah, Al Capone's vault. Yeah. That was great. Remember watching that as a kid.
And there's nothing there.
No, but the History Channel has become, it's been the Hitler Channel for years.
Yeah, which I love.
Which is great. I love that.
But they have to compete with with what people want, which is reality.
Yeah.
shows.
So what they do, they'll take, they
have like ghost hunters and.
Well, no, not even. They've taken the alien concept because people love aliens. They've taken the World War II concept and they've meshed them together into Nazi aliens.
Like the Nazi occult stories.
The Nazi occult stories and how Hitler had alien technology. And
this was the plot of the first Raiders of the Lost Ark movie.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, right? Pretty much. And that's what they've done. Which is great. And that's how Macs are made.
That's how Macs are made. That's right. They're made by
with moon rocks. Mines and moon rocks.
In the mountains of Peru.
Somebody asked me once what makes a Mac better, an Apple product better than Windows, and now I have the answer. It's moon rocks.
Right.
That's how they make them. And very nice aluminum. I want to respond to this before we move on, and I know we've jumped topics, which we always do. I've been getting emails from viewers. A couple weeks ago, I complained how I get a shock from my MacBook. And I told someone this, and they said, you are out of your mind. You're hallucinating. Spencer, that does a show here on the network, complains that the tips of his fingers burn when he's using his MacBook.
Huh.
I I always get a shock on my palms and my fingers when I'm using this MacBook. I've gotten maybe 20 emails from people saying, I thought I was crazy. I get an electric shock every time I use my MacBook. So apparently, it's a known thing. People are getting electrocuted from their MacBooks.
But no one will complain because everyone loves Apple so much.
No, it's a feature.
You know,
it's a feature.
You need to wear one of those wristbands, the anti-static wristbands.
Yeah, that's what I need to do. Strap myself down.
Yeah.
To a pole while I'm using this thing.
Right.
I do want to talk to you about the Windows 8 upgrade promo that was announced earlier this week. If you buy a Windows 7 laptop or a product, you get an upgrade to Windows 8 Pro for $15.
By the way, so they haven't actually announced this.
They haven't. They haven't announced it. It's leaked, I guess, right?
Yep.
Is there any fact to this?
Well, yeah, I'm the source for the $15 thing. So
you are? Oh, okay.
I can tell you that's
You know
true.
what's so funny? Yeah, and this just shows you how the tech world works. I had no clue you were the source.
Yeah.
I've seen it on every website, and
that's weird.
I have not seen Paul Thurrott's credited for anything.
Why would you? Yeah. So, Mary Jo Foley was the first to come out with the. Someone had given her the promo image that had the dollar amount was not available yet, and she wrote about that last week sometime, and I hadn't heard anything about it, but first one and then now two sources I have at Microsoft contacted me on the side, and I guess Microsoft wasn't too happy about the leak, but they provided me with more information about it. The only bit I put out was the $15 bit, simply because both of them mentioned that, but it is going to be $15. So the thing that's interesting about it is obviously Microsoft has always done this kind of promo in the past. Every time a new version of Windows comes out, they want to keep selling the old computers. They don't want people to stop and wait, But this time around, it's going to cost $15. So people are like, what's going on here? Without giving away, like I said, there's more information about what this is and why it's working the way it's working. I guess the way I would say this is, in the past, you would get a version that equated to the version that you have. So if you bought Windows, Vista Home Premium,
you got Windows 7.
You would get Windows 7 Home Premium, right? Now this time around, they only have two versions of Windows that they're going to sell at retail,
and it was free. I mean, it was a free upgrade.
Well, it was free plus shipping and handling, actually.
Okay,
and it was done through the PC Maker, so
it ended up costing you a couple bucks
just to get So this time around, they're going to give you Windows 8 Pro regardless of what version of Windows you have.
Okay.
Previously, Windows 7. I think the assumption here is that when you buy a computer at retail or from online through a PC Maker, you're going to be getting Windows 7. Typically, it's going to be home premium or professional, right? I mean, those are pretty much the only two versions that are actually offered. It's kind of interesting because I think technically you can still get starter on netbooks. I guess you could get Home Basic, although Home Basic is is essentially an international third world country kind of version these days. But what's no one's really talking about is Windows 7 Ultimate kind of dropped off the face of the earth.
It's gone, and they
you don't really see it.
Well, it wasn't necessary. I mean, I know a lot of people I know people wanted, that was like the creme de la creme of Windows, but it wasn't necessary, right? I mean, most people have just.
It's a little strange. I don't think it was. I guess not. I mean, I think there should be a way for anyone to get everything that's in Windows, and that was what that was. This time around, they have an enterprise version that doesn't really have an equivalent on the consumer side. Now, granted, most of those features are very much geared toward the enterprise, but I could picture power users wanting to do something like Windows to Go, which lets you install Windows on a memory stick or whatever. So that's not happening. I would imagine that silently behind the scenes, for the most part, Windows 7 Ultimate has kind of disappeared on purpose so that there's no weirdness here. Windows 8 Pro isn't exactly the same as Windows 7 Ultimate, from a comparison standpoint.
I have the Balmer edition, by the way. The Windows 8 Ultimate Balmer edition, which I'm very proud of.
Does it scream like a monkey every time you open the box?
Oh, yeah. It's just screaming and telling you how great they are and how they have big things coming up. They had BitLocker, They had BitLocker in Ultimate, but really it wasn't necessary. Most people didn't even know it existed. So, I mean, it makes sense for them to kind of streamline their product line.
It isn't Pro.
What was that?
It isn't Pro, BritLocker.
It isn't Pro.
Yeah.
Oh, so what was the big deal about Ultimate? I forgot what it was.
Back in Windows
Windows 7.
I'd have to go back.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was. I mean, it was something very little.
It's not much. I mean, maybe you. I've been so focused on Windows 8, I can't even remember
what it was
anymore. Back in the Windows Vista time frame, they had big plans for Ultimate. You know, back then was when they were doing the SKU changeover, and they had this notion that they were going to do all kinds of stuff. You know, they were going to have like there was going to be like a club of some kind. You would join like a club online, and you'd get exclusive offers and things. And they never, God, they really blew that one horribly.
By the way, the chat room is saying BitLocker wasn't in 7 Pro. It's in 8 Pro.
It is an 8 Pro. That's what I said.
Yeah. So are they going to allow you to have a free upgrade if you want to go to, let's say you have, Windows 7 Pro, would you get a free upgrade to Windows 8 Pro?
No. Not as I understand it. I believe it's $15.
$15. I mean, that's not bad.
Yeah.
$15. I would love them just to tell you, you know what, if you have Windows 7 and you want to upgrade, $35.
I just remind people, I can't really talk about the details here, but there's more to it than this, right?
Yeah.
So in other words, it is $15. In the past, like I said, you would have to pay for shipping and handling for the most part. It's $15. So this is June 2nd is not that far away. Yeah. So I'm sure they'll have an official announcement before then. There's a little bit more to it than just this. So
no, it's
not a bad deal.
I mean, that's a great price.
Like, I didn't have to pay for this before. I don't understand.
I mean, I honestly think that the evolution of the way that they sell these operating systems is going to kind of become cheaper and cheaper, and it has to an extent. I mean, you could technically get Office, or you could buy Windows 7. My wife is in school, and we have like 6-7 copies of Windows 7 that we bought for $29 each.
Yeah, sure.
And each of my, we upgraded all the computers, so it is possible to get it cheaper.
I would love to see Microsoft do the Apple thing, and offer an electronic in-place upgrade for $29,
I mean, why don't they do it? Have they commented on why they don't do it?
Well, by the way, so maybe they will.
Maybe they will, okay.
They have not talked about... No, I'm not saying they will.
But
they've not talked about pricing yet. So they've really kind of simplified things here from an upgrade perspective. There's only a couple of choices. They also have an incredible electronic updating capacity that they didn't really have previous to this, where you can install this thing over the web. The upgrade experience is much better than it used to be, which is, always improved in each version. But this is, and we'll see if this changes between now and the final version. But as of today, my advice for people right now, if you were going to run the consumer preview, the release preview that's about to come out, you actually will have a better experience if you upgrade from Windows 7 to that than you would if you installed it fresh on the same computer.
Which is
for
a
lot of reasons, but that is not the way it used to be. So this is a big
you couldn't
change.
do an upgrade. I mean, it was almost like if you knew what you were doing, you would not do an upgrade.
Exactly. That was always the advice. Back everything up. Be really sure about it. If you're, I even do things like, I bought this computer that I bought. I took the hard drive out of it, and I put my own SSD in. And I don't even touch that thing. That hard drive's gone. Well, it's not gone. It's my house. But I mean, that thing is not. I don't even worry about it. And I don't think that's something everyone could do. But you could kind of make the case, like, look, if you're gonna, maybe you should back the whole thing. In the past, you'd be like, just put a new hard drive in it. Hard drives are cheap, not SSDs, but hard drives are.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do a clean install, like just leave the other one sitting there on the side.
Well, SSDs, you brought something up. SSD prices have dropped tremendously over the last, 6 months. You could buy...
I noticed that. So with this new computer, I had been buying... I have so many 128 gigabyte SSDs now. It's almost ludicrous. And for this one, I was like, it'd be really nice to get a 256. They were prohibitively expensive before. And it was, I want to say it was like $229, which is, not inexpensive, but way cheaper than it was the last time I thought about doing something like this.
Yeah.
And this thing boots Windows 8 in like 6 seconds.
Oh, Jesus.
It's crazy.
I need to get an SSD in this thing because the main production machine that we have here, of course, it's a Windows machine. We're using VidBlaster to run the network. And we have such issues with the hard drive not being able to keep up with the write speed. So it actually causes the CPU to shoot up because the hard drive it can't write the video. We're having a lot of issues with it, but if we had an SSD, that would work great. So I want to get maybe a 250 gig SSD as the main drive, write to them, and then transfer everything to a secondary, 2 terabyte drive. That would be the way to do it. You don't really need the hard drive. I need hard drive space, but do you think the masses need anything over 300 gigs at this point with so much cloud storage out there?
No, I mean, even I could get away with, I've been using, like I said, for the past year, all my computers have basically had 128 gig SSDs. So I go out on the road and, at first it's a little weird. You bring an external hard drive with you, maybe it's got some movies on it or something. And that's not, that's not a horrible thing to have to do. But yeah, after a while, you change the way you do things. I used to bring my entire music collection on the, hard drive. I used to, bring all these movies and stuff. And then after a while, you realize I really don't need this stuff. I think that's just at first it was hard. 3264 was borderline.
But you know what, Paul?
128 is where it becomes possible.
People do it with iPads. People using iPads to some it is. They're using an iPad with a 16 gig hard drive. I like that transition. Like I love the people.
I realize they're replacing a computer with it. I mean, it's not a computer in the sense that. I put Photoshop on my computer and I edit huge files all day long. 16 gigs would never work. 16 is barely enough for me to have Windows. I realize it's inefficient compared to an iPad, but I actually need the space for stuff.
Actually, let me see what the pricing is right now for an SSD. I mean, we're looking at I think a 128 is like $100, like $110. It's $1 a gig. I think the last time I looked, it was $1 a gig, which, better than double the price that you were paying last year. And that's really what's going to save this Ultrabook market. I mean, that's what's really going to kick it into high gear, and it might cause a boom in sales where you're going to have these Ultrabooks. They're going to subsidize the price of the SSD in them because you're buying an entire computer, and it's really going to drive the price down of the SSD for people that want to go buy it. What are they coming with, Paul? I mean, they're coming with 128, I'm assuming, right? As like the stock?
That's the standard, yeah.
Which that's not bad.
But you also have this, there's this class of machines that aren't quite Ultrabooks, right? HP's got a line they call sleek books because for one reason or another, they don't meet the Ultrabook spec. Those MacBook Pros, if they're right, if the rumors are right, will not be Ultrabooks. And so on those machines, one of the many ways in which you could not meet the spec is you could do that thing we were talking about earlier, where you have a small amount of flash memory, like 32 gigs, and then you have you can have a huge hard drive. And that kind of a compromise is actually something that I think a lot of people would be okay with.
Yeah,
performance is fine. And the capacity is dramatically better if you need that kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's probably cheaper, by the way.
They're about $100. It's about $1 a gig currently for the market price for an SSD. So I mean, I guess you could justify a 128 or even a 250.
Sure.
$250 for 250, but you're getting an SSD.
Depending on the machine, some of them may be hard or impossible to get into the drive. But I tend to buy these things after the fact, or not as part of the purchase.
Now,
when possible.
Now, with the killing of optical, you don't find it necessary, do you? That these yeah.
No,
do you think it's over for it?
No, the faster the better on that one. I need and I use personally an optical drive on my computer, my desktop computer. I haven't needed an optical drive on
a laptop.
No, not in years.
I had to do a video editing job, and they gave me a DVD to edit. And I had to use Handbrake to rip the DVD, which that was one of the first times I've used an optical in many years. I mean, I can't remember.
That's actually all I use. Well, not all I use it for, but that's one of the few things I use it for.
No, it's really interesting how it's evolved really into this dead media device that people really are not using. I want to take a little break. I want to talk about our advertiser, and that's Audible.com. And then we're going to come back with the 10-year game because Paul and I like talking about the future because we're futurists here at the GFK Network. Futurists, Paul. I don't have your Audible pick of the week, but I'm sure Paul has a phenomenal Audible pick of the week. I'm going to try to open it up. But What the Tech is brought to you by Audible.com. Get your free audiobook by going to audibletrial.com/GFQ. You get a free audiobook. And Paul always has a great Audible pick of the week. Paul, what is your pick this week while I try to find it?
This one's kind of a classic. It's Neil Stephenson's first, actually it's not his first book. It's his first big book, Snow Crash. I think I want to say it's his third book. It's kind of a cyberpunk classic. Classic Neil Stephenson in the sense that he doesn't know how to end it properly, but it's still one of the best books I've ever read. I would say this one and Cryptonomicon, which I think was the book after Snow Crash. It's both absolutely fantastic. For whatever it's worth, this guy also dropped off a cliff after this. He did that massive, trilogy of books that was just almost impossible to read. And I haven't liked most of his more recent books like Red Me. And I don't know what it is about him, but he's gotten dense and very complex. But Snow Crash is what, God, if he could just write books like Snow Crash. I mean, this
book is about 10 years old, right?
It's more than that. It's got to be, I'm not even sure. I bet it's 15 years old now. It could be 10 years old.
I'm curious.
Somewhere
I remember
there.
when it came out.
Fantastic, futuristic, the kind of, predicted not predicted, but, has this imagery about the future of the internet and how we're all, walking around in virtual worlds and interacting and the kind of the political climate of the time. And it's just a great, excellent story. Really, really well done. And unfortunately much better than anything he's written since. But it is absolutely a classic. It's excellent.
Somebody said he doesn't know how to write endings. He's a preview of Snow Crash.
He does not. That's very true.
There we go.
Right, but the preview of this is not that great for some.
Oh, it's no.
Yeah. Definition 2A. Anything resembling snow. B. The white specks on a television screen resulting from weak reception. Crash. Verb. Definition 5. To fail suddenly as a business or an economy.
Oh, thank you for the definitions.
Well, this is
Jonathan
probably
Davis.
like the preface or something where they have the two words.
Sometimes they get it in like such a really interesting spot on Audible.
Yep.
And sometimes it's just like the beginning of the book.
Yep.
Where they're like reading like who's narrating it. The regular price is $34.99 for the book, but you get it for free with your one credit if you sign up to audible.com right now. You get your free audiobook by going to audibletrial.com/GFQ. Thank you, Audible, for sponsoring What the Tech. Now on to the 10-year game, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
This week, I got a lot of suggestions, and I had one. We did not do the desktop computer, did we?
I don't.
We did not, because
so.
I had a lot of people say desktop to desktop, and then I had one that said the keyboard and mouse, which I thought probably wouldn't change, so I skipped over that. So I have two of them. I have the desktop computer and the digital camera.
Right.
In 10 years.
Both are issues dear to my heart.
Both, yes. You are both a desktop computer and the digital camera.
Yeah.
You're both of them.
Yep.
50-50. For now, yeah. You may morph into something else at one point. But where will the desktop computer be in 10 years? Because we've heard that the desktop is dying. For a while now.
It's going to be a smaller and smaller part. There's no doubt about it. But I think it's still going to be around. Just like it's not so much car truck as it is car and really niche uses of trucks, right? There are specific kinds of trucks. Like Ford now finally sells this van here in the U.S. that they've always sold in Europe. It's kind of tall and it's kind of weird looking. And, these are used by electricians and carpenters and people with very specific jobs. And just because that truck doesn't sell in the hundreds of thousands, like some very popular cars must.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the market for it is not valid. There are going to be people that need to do whatever it is, CAD CAM type stuff, high-end Photoshop work, video work like you're doing.
So a super high-end machine will always be necessary.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's very clear where the market's going. It's heading toward portable computers. I can tell you that personally, one of the things I do every New Year's for obvious reasons is I do a reassessment of the technology I use, and I sort of frame it as almost a New Year's resolution kind of thing. And I had both. It's funny, this year the digital camera and the desktop computer were on the list of items I expected not to be using by the time that this year was out. But as the year progressed and it became obvious, I had been using a computer that was 3 processor generations old. It was a Core 2 quad, so it was a quad version of a Core 2 Duo type processor. It was getting a little long in the tooth. I sort of expected that some awesome laptop would come out and I could dock it and I would do that. And that seemed like a reasonable idea. But, with all the sync technologies we have now on the Windows side through, SkyDrive and Live Mesh and everything, and the ability to, have everything you are using replicated across all these machines. And of course, in Windows 8 now, they have that capability with settings and so forth. Having multiple computers for someone like me isn't as complex as it used to be. In fact, it's almost a little too annoying. I've been doing a lot of, writing with the book and for the articles I read about Windows 8, and I'll be over here on the right, and I'll change the desktop on the laptop. And as I'm doing it, I can peripherally kind of see that on my main desktop, it has changed over here as well. And that's because Windows 8 does that automatically now. You can turn it off,
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it's almost so seamless you forget about it. And I ended up buying a new desktop and will buy a new laptop this year as well, and will buy a tablet of some kind. In
so
the future
do you buy something every year?
No, I mean, in the case of my desktop, I hadn't bought something in several years, so that one had been sitting there for a long time. It just seemed good enough, it lasted a long time. With the laptops, because of traveling and the issues around size and weight and all that stuff, I do tend to switch that machine out every year. So a year ago, I bought a Lenovo ThinkPad. Earlier this year, I bought an Ultrabook. By the, I would say by the end of the third quarter, I will have bought another Ultrabook. And, we'll see how it goes from there. I mean, these things are starting to change. We're going to see hybrid machines and all that. But I do something very specific. So my usage patterns aren't necessarily
They're a little different.
Yeah, like anyone else. But
as far as
I sit here in front of this computer all day long. So, yeah, I felt like a desktop computer was the way to go.
Yeah, I need at least. I kind of need desktops at this point to do what I'm doing. But I was always a desktop guy. Even when I had a laptop, I never used the laptop. It just sat there. When I got my Mac, my first Mac in 2008, so I'm a new Mac user. It sat there for like a good year, and I barely turned it on. I got it because I wanted to, learn to use a Mac. And I never turned on because I was always on a desktop. Now it's kind of changed because my desktops are my production machines, and I'm on a laptop all the time. But it's almost like you forget what it's like to have a large display and how things function on a large display, because it's totally different than using a 13-inch display. Websites look a little different. It's just totally different in that sense. But I think in 10 years, people are still going to use desktops. But as far as the hardware goes, I think a lot is going to change with that. Over the last 10 years, I mean, from 2000 to 2010, the quality of even lower-end desktops has improved tremendously.
Yeah. Definitely.
You were looking at those, remember those Mac clone e-machines in the early 2000s?
Yeah.
I mean, 2000, 2001, 2002, and they were terrible computers. You would go to Best Buy.
Yeah, you could buy a machine today that was based on not a netbook, but a low-end laptop, and it would be great.
Yeah. It was awful at a certain point. You couldn't buy. I mean, even I'm thinking like Best Buy would have those sales like $199, and they would just be awful computers. Sure. Now, if you're spending $300 on a desktop, you're getting a pretty decent desktop.
Yep.
So I think that's changed. I do not think desktops will have fans in 10 years.
We're right. So we're kind of getting there. I mean, the
cooling
big trend is in these all-in-one computers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's true whether the machine is detached from the screen or not, it will basically, I mean, Ultrabooks, I believe there are Ultrabooks that don't have fans. I mean, or they must have some fans. But, when you have a bigger space to work in thermally, it gives you that opportunity to not have a fan. The new Ivy Bridge processors that are coming out this year, actually chipsets, I should say, have graphics that are far better than the Intel integrated graphics have ever been, which is another source of a big fan in a lot of computers. So you can get rid of that. Yeah, I think that's definitely true.
I think fans are going to go, and I think even like the heavy-duty processing computers are going to be liquid-cooled because it's so easy to liquid-cool them now. And it's not this mess of a process. And even I think Dell is liquid-cooling some of their higher-end gaming machines.
Right.
I
that
actually
must just be a
regret...
cost issue, I would say, for right now.
What was that?
It must just be a cost issue at this point.
It's cheap. It's not that expensive.
I will say, for whatever it's worth, this big HP thing I bought is big and it has fans. But
what's the model on it?
It's so quiet. And it's bizarre because this is a weird thing to say. Obviously in the winter the computers heat the office in a way, right? All these machines are running and it's kind of nice. This one blows cool air out of it. It's like
that's a good sign.
It's like cooling the room.
Yeah, that's a good
which
sign.
Which is the opposite of
which model HP is it?
It's a Pavilion HPE something. I don't know. H8.
H8XT?
There's a whole model number after that. Okay. It's like H8-1220T.
I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, it's a nice looking computer.
It looks like a Cylon from Battlestar Galactica,
yeah,
which I like.
It does actually. It's a very nice looking computer.
Yeah.
No, I think they're going to get I don't see the pricing dropping so much more than they are now, but I do think the hardware is getting better, of course. That everybody
cooler
has
too, right? Cooler looking, right?
Yeah, much cooler looking.
All these touch-based all-in-ones look awesome.
I mean, I remember I built my first computer in 2001.
Yeah.
That I built myself, and I had like the green fans going, and I had the LEDs. And the thing was insane looking, and people were coming. They were awed by it. Now you see everybody with these computers.
Yeah.
If your computer is not glowing blue, there's something wrong with you. And that's a fact, actually. That's a medical fact. If your computer's not glowing blue, I think you should go see a doctor. But I think they're gonna get faster, of course. These big, bulky towers. It's gonna get slimmer. They're gonna get better looking. Less plastic, in my opinion. I don't think they're going to have these plasticky looking desktops. And I'm talking about the big desktop. I'm not talking about like the little micro.
I was, not to keep bringing this back to this computer I just bought, but one of the things I just did was I pulled it out of the office. I put it out in the den and I opened it up and started swapping some stuff out of it. And I took my old tower out there and, took some stuff out of that. And this thing weighs like half of the Dell it replaces. Not really.
And it's a little scary, right? When you go lift it. It's
way lighter. Like the other one is a tank. And, at the time you get it, it's like, oh, it's really well built or whatever. It's nice. But, the HP is really well built too, I have to say. I mean, it's lighter. It's about the same size.
No, the build quality has gotten a lot better. I mean,
it seems to me it has,
yeah. I have experienced, BIOS is something interesting. Someone just private messaged me, and thank you for saying that. They asked, what do you think is going to happen to BIOS? And we've seen a future BIOS with that EFI stuff.
Yeah, which this thing has, by the way.
Well, yeah, this one too. The one I have, which is it's really easy to tune.
So by default, there's no screen that it doesn't show you anything at boot time, right? So when I first installed Windows 8 on this thing, I couldn't use Hyper-V because you had to turn on the virtualization stuff in the BIOS or whatever. So I was hitting all these keys to try to figure out how to get into the BIOS. I had to look it up in the manual because this thing booted so fast. I couldn't get it to stop at the, I couldn't figure it out.
I still find it funny that like it still has like a post screen computers.
Well, so that, by the way, on this machine, that's off by default.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
You can turn it on. You can even turn it on with a delay, which I did for a little while just to make sure everything was the way I wanted it. But
I got to play around with mine. I mean, I like the EFI stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it makes overclocking very easy. You hit one button.
There is literally an overclocking menu in this thing, which is crazy, which I'm not going to touch. I mean, it's already.
I think you should crank it up.
It's so quiet. I just don't. It's so much faster than what I had before. It's not even. It's not even worth scrolling.
So to sum it up, we're saying better hardware, much better cooling.
Yep.
No fans. I mean, if any, if you think about it, if they go with a, there's no chip. I guess for your CPU, you're still going to need something.
I swear to God, it's possible that Lenovo just announced a machine that doesn't have fans in it.
How are they
desktop
cooling the
machine, a tiny
CPU?
one.
How are they cooling the processor?
I don't know.
Let me Google.
It just seems familiar. They just announced a really low-end machine. I wonder. I'm sorry. I should say a really small machine.
I mean, they're doing it with. If you look at, they do it with tablets. So.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what someone said, Andrew? Are we gonna have Are we gonna have ARM desktops and laptops that they wouldn't need a fan? Yeah, I guess. I mean, if ARM becomes a dominant player in 10 years, I don't think ARM is going to be around.
I wonder about that. So ARM has some interesting advantages, but also some interesting limitations, right?
I mean, that's a big investment. Windows is now supporting it. I understand that, but in 10 years,
well, but here's the problem with it: an ARM like an ARM desktop computer, right? ARM version of Windows 8 doesn't run desktop apps. Well, new or third-party desktop apps. So, I mean, it seems like a lot of the usage case for this type of form factor is negated by the whole ARM thing. In other words, we were talking about how high-end users would need this, right? ARM processors today are only 32 bits, so 4 gigs of RAM is the top end of that. All those high-end applications we were talking about, like Photoshop, AutoCAD, whatever, are not going to run on ARM. So I think we are going to see those things. I just don't think they're going to have a lot of traction in the markets that I think is the future for the desktop. I just don't. Maybe I think the more likely scenario for ARM-based desktops is as what are essentially thin clients for corporations.
For corporations, yeah, almost replaceable, disposable computers.
Yeah, absolutely, because you could be running a real version of Windows 8 virtually from a data center using VDI or whatever, and that would replace. But the ARM stuff would be so cheap they wouldn't care.
The ARM stuff is going to really upset a lot of kids, like in high school, when they want a new computer and their parents are like, hey, I'll just buy you, this lower end $100 computer, and then they realize they can't play anything because it's an ARM-based computer, which we still have not heard much information about ARM-based desktops on Windows 8, right? How that's going to play out.
I've been told there will be some.
There will, but we don't have much detail.
Some companies were making those really small desktop computers that were essentially netbooks. They're probably going to be like that. Just little tiny things. Dell will make the version you can plug onto the back of your screen.
Yeah, it'll mount separate, on.
Because it's like a space-saving thing. I just don't see, in the same way that the desktop market will become a niche market, the ARM desktop market is like, I just don't see that being a big part of it.
We have another product that we're going to go into before we wrap it up, but I do want to tell everybody, if you have an idea or if you have a topic that you want us to discuss for the 10-year game product, just anything in technology, you could Twitter us. You could Twitter Paul at the Rot.
Twitter us.
Or
is that what you do? You Twitter us?
You Twitter us. Or you could Twitter me at Andrew Zarian, or you can send an email, guysfromqueens@gmail.com. The next one is digital cameras. Now, we've discussed this many times in the past, but I don't think we've included it in the 10-year game. What will happen to digital cameras? I am going to say I do not think the point and shoot will exist in 10 years. And if it does, it's going to be a very niche product, and a very small percentage of people will own it. And the ones that they own will probably be, someone said steroids in the chat. Yes, it'll be a phone on, it'll be a camera on steroids, much like an iPod Touch. That will be the closest thing that we have to a point-and-shoot digital camera. SLRs, of course, are going to continue to exist, but point-and-shoots will be long gone because phones and devices like this will be able to do phenomenal pictures by that time. Do you agree or disagree, Paul?
I completely agree.
Do you think they're going to still exist?
No, they're going to be gone.
They're going to be gone totally.
I bought, it's weird. I don't do this on purpose, but for the past 2 or 3 years, I bought a new point and click every year. And I don't use them around the house at all, obviously. I mean, primarily they're for trips and then maybe for a big family event, so that kind of stuff there. So, camera phones are okay for the day-to-day stuff. And last year when I bought this, I described the camera that I bought at the time, I described it as the last digital camera I'm ever going to buy. And because I figured this was it, right? It had I want to say it had a 20x optical zoom or somewhere in there, crazy optical zoom. So it's great. You could throw a huge memory card in there. The battery lasted great. It had GPS, so it would geotag your photos, which I liked. And I figured this was it. I'm not going to buy any more of these. And then we went on vacation in February, and the camera died literally as we got back to the hotel room on the last day of the trip. And I ended up throwing it away there, and we came home without it. And I just took the memory card out of it and obviously downloaded all the pictures beforehand. But that kind of screwed up my plans a little bit, because as it stands today, there is no digital smartphone, including the iPhone 4S, that is good enough to replace.
Well, because there's no, I mean, optical zoom is the biggest uphill battle that these phones face.
So I'd be willing to give up the optical zoom bit, right?
Okay.
If everything else was perfect.
Yeah.
Most point and click cameras don't have 20x optical zoom anyway. I think 5x is probably closer to the average.
What do I have on this? 4x, I believe I have on this thing.
Yeah. So I had gotten a camera. It was years ago. We had done a home swap, and some guy showed me the camera he had, and that one had what at the time was an excellent optical zoom. Maybe it was like 8x or something. And it was a little big, but I thought, that's really interesting. And it's neat when you go on vacation, especially you go to another city or something, and you can really zoom in on stuff. It's really kind of a cool thing to have. But I would give it up if I thought I could take a phone with me and take how awesome would that be? But I can't. You cannot try. I can't.
I mean, the iPhone is almost there. I mean, it's almost there.
It's not good enough.
I think in another year they're probably going to get it.
I would think so. I think we're so close. And I think the plan that I had originally was I bought this camera last year, and I thought, well, this will get me through this year. So we're going to go on vacation again end of July, early August, whatever it is. If that camera hadn't broken, I wouldn't have bought another camera. I mean, I would have taken that camera, obviously. Yeah. I'd never intended to buy another camera, but now that this is broken, I'm not going to buy one until a little closer to the trip, because I want to see what happens with them. So I've been looking at that stuff lately, and I don't see anything obvious yet. But I mean, this year, unfortunately, you need a camera. I have
a Canon here that I've maybe used 4 times. It's an SD960 IS. The
kind of a classic. Yeah,
it's a great camera. 720p video. By the way, the aperture on this thing with the video is excellent. I mean, the video quality is just unbelievable. It's so surprising to see the video quality.
Yeah. So, but how much thicker is that thing than your smartphone?
So
right?
let's.
It's like 3-4 times.
Yeah. So look at this and look at this.
So I mean, this highlights the issue.
Yeah.
Right. You can only do so much. I actually believe that one of the reasons the iPhone 4S is such a squat little phone is that they put some room in there for a decent camera.
Yeah, and you know what?
Android devices have those bumps.
I'll give up. The luxury of having a
Apple
thin
will
phone.
never do it.
Yeah.
So they'll never put a bump on it. You'll never see a bump on an Apple camera.
But I mean, the sensors are getting so much better, and the chips are getting so much better. Where in a year or two, they're not going to have to. I think they're gonna.
Yep.
The quality has gotten so much better, but. I have this Canon. I never use it. My wife has a Nikon. She never uses it.
Yeah, but if your wife came home today and said, "Hey, I just want a trip to Rio or something, or Sydney, Australia," you'd bring the camera, wouldn't you? I mean, you wouldn't say, "Yeah, we'll take pictures with the iPhone 4." I may never get back there again in my entire life, but I'm gonna use the iPhone to take pictures.
I guess you're right.
I don't think you would.
Yeah, in that case, I would. I would definitely take it. An interesting story about this. Canon has one of the greatest upgrade policies ever implemented with any product. If you have a Canon camera, it could be 3 years old. You could smash it to bits. You could call them up and tell them, I have a Canon camera. I broke it. Really? I don't want it repaired. Can you upgrade me? I got this for $100 last year.
Maybe I should have saved my camera.
And all that you need to do is send the old camera to them.
Right.
No matter what shape. I mean, you could take a baseball bat to this camera. And they'll be like, okay, just give us $100. We'll send you a brand new. I mean, this was fairly new when I got it. Sure. And it's no questions asked. I mean, they're like, okay, just give me your credit card. We're going to process it. And they send it to you within a couple days. Canon is unbelievable with that. They've always been really good with their upgrade. Even if you don't break it and you just want to upgrade, you call them up and you tell them, hey, listen, I have a Canon camera. I want to upgrade it. And you just trade in your old one. They send you a new one. I tell people this all the time. They think I'm crazy. They've never heard of it.
I don't know what these companies are going to do, though, when no one needs their product anymore. It's going to be like the standalone GPSs,
Well, that's the problem. I mean,
good idea for the time, but...
I don't think it'll be totally phased out in 10 years. I think they'll have some version of what a point and shoot is now. I know they have those glassless, mirrorless cameras now that everybody's going crazy about.
Well, and there's also a kind of an interesting sub-market in the point and short market where they actually have some machines that are really small, but they still have interchangeable lenses. Which, could be interesting too.
But if I'm doing that, I'm going to spend the money. I'm going to get the lens. I want to,
maybe.
A real SLR.
I mean, yeah. I just like the size of this stuff. I mean, my dad lugs around, and I used to too when I was younger. I had an SLR for many, many years, and it's the sheer size and bulk of the equipment that turns me off.
I mean, I have a an Icon D60, which is a couple of years old, but it gets the job done. It's a great camera. I was playing around with those Canon the Mark what is it? The 5D Mark 3s, the new ones. No, the Mark D5 II wasn't the latest one, but it was a refresh one. The thing is heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really heavy, big camera. I mean, it's like this big, this stupid thing. It's a great camera, but it's a very specific person that's using
a professional tool. It's not. There's this weird class of like techie affluent people who have really nice cameras. It's just to me, I'm just going on vacation. I just want to take pictures of vacation. That's all. I'm not trying to take the next Ansel Adams.
I think a lot of people want it for like the focus and the aperture. Like they like having like the back blurred. But these cameras are doing
and have it actually work.
No, these cameras are doing such a good job with it.
But that's why smartphone cameras suck so bad, because they never just work. In fact, they barely ever work at all.
Yeah.
You take something quickly and it's going to be blurry every single time.
Yeah. So you think in 10 years, where do you think the smartphones will be as far as the camera goes?
Well, I mean, assuming it's going to be well before 10 years. I mean, assuming smartphones are still around in their current capacity. I think even the thinnest phones that we have today, like the Focus S that I have, or some of the Samsung type phones, are going to have incredible optics in them, and no one is ever going to. You'll just stop worrying about that stuff. It's going to be great.
A couple of weeks ago when we were doing the predictions for the cell phones, we both said that we'll have some sort of flexible material cell phone.
Yeah.
And I said the cell phone won't be what we think it is. It's just going to be around us. And one thing we forgot is the camera, how important it is to have a camera on your cell phone. What's going to happen to the camera if you have this flimsy,
well, there are always going to have to be stiff components in it. I mean, the size of the camera itself is very small.
I think we're going to go backwards as far as smartphones go at one point with the camera, because we're going to get so thin, and it's going to become a different material where we're going to have to take, a sacrifice. We're going to have to sacrifice our luxury of having all these all-in-one devices to kind of catch up to the size.
Right.
I mean, that could happen. I want there to be projection video with my cell phone. I just want to project reality with it. Like I don't need Paul to be in Boston. Paul could be sitting right here with me. He could just project. You wouldn't even know the difference. No, but I think you're right about it.
Seems like we should be able to do that.
It's crazy, right? We can't.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right though. I think the point is, we'll have a few on the market, but it'll be one or two. That's about it. You won't have this every single manufacturer in the world making a camera thing going on. Right. It's interesting. I mean, it's really interesting when you think about it, because the technology is changing so rapidly.
Something that seemed obvious to us, growing up, you're going to have a camera. Like, okay, I can see where I would need a camera. To my kids, they're going to say, "What, a camera?
Why would I do that?
I have cameras and everything.
Yeah,
I don't need a camera. I mean, a camera is not a thing; it's a part of a thing.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
It's funny. It's a different perspective.
Oh, totally different. Totally different. Again, if you have a topic you want us to discuss on the show, send an email, guysfromqueens@gmail.com. You could Twitter me at Andrew Zarian. You could Twitter Paul at Thurrott. You could also check out Paul's website, winsupersite.com. One of my favorite sites. I visit it every single day, actually. I actually use you as a tech blog, Paul. I don't know if that's what your site is, but I use your site as a tech blog.
Yeah.
I know that's crazy. I actually go there and I read articles, too. I know a lot of people, I know that's a little weird to people. You can check out Paul's other podcast that he does every Thursday on the Twit Network for Windows Weekly with Mary Jo Foley and Leah Laporte. Great show. Again, that's one of my favorite. You know what, Paul? I'm a Paul Thurrott fan.
Wow.
I am. I'm a big Paul Thurrott fan. Remember, if you miss any portion of the show, you could subscribe to us. We're on iTunes. We're on Zune. We're pretty much everywhere you could imagine. You go to gfknetwork.com. You could hit the subscribe button, or it's on winsupersite.com as well a day or two after we finish recording. So you can subscribe via Paul's site as well. Until next time, guys, take care. Brush your hair. Good night, everybody.